Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us. And I know many of you have been sending us feedback of what the messages are doing in your life, in the lives of your brothers and your dads, and some of you as husbands. So we're so excited. At Encounter, we are all about building great men. What we want to do is to build you so that you can be the best man that God created you to be. We want to tell all the men out there, we love you. We are always for you. We want to make sure that you are living out your best life ever. When men flourish, when men are great in community, when men out there live out their greatest potential, one thing that we know, women are better, but also the second thing is children are better. Children and women are safe. They live out their God-given potential. Every time, men are better. And so last month we dealt with an amazing topic, the realities of men, and many of you were blessed to hear some of those realities and how we can deal with them. So this month we are going to be dealing with the early man and the modern man. The early man, we're looking at 100 years, 200 years back. What defined a man? What made a man to be respected? But also we'll look at what is the contrast now. What is that dilemma? Because there's a bit of tension. The early man of 100 plus years, but also the man now, we who are living in this 21st century. There's a very big discrepancy. So let's just dive into today's message. So one of the things I have realized, the early man, the man of 200 years ago, the one who used to go hunting, the ones who went to factories, there are a couple of things that defined them as a man. One of them was provision. When the man provided, everyone called him a man. So manhood was equivalent to provision. I'll give you some stories. When in our culture, when people went out, men went out and gathered, went hunting, they spent 2 days, 3 days out there looking for some meat so that they can bring it home. Mom stayed at home with the children, but you see the boys tagged along and they went to hunt. And when they brought back that animal at home, the entire clan, the entire community was so excited. They were saying, wow, the men have brought back food. And so that defined the early man. That defined the man 100 years ago. Now, some of those, it was in the factories. People went to ginger, people went to process the cotton. And so the man was defined by what he did, the provision he brought in. And that made him a great man. Now, one of the things that you will note on the provision part, it was so risky. When you went to hunt, we didn't know whether you'd come back. And that caused a lot of respect for the men back then. But also, those who went to factories, their hands would be cut off by machines. There were a lot of accidents. You didn't know whether your man will come back. And so, work then that brought provision made a man respected, made a man to be loved. Man was defined by what he brought at home. But now let's contrast that with the modern man today. Now, the modern man today, things have changed. Yes, I go to work. And when I work, I bring bread home, I bring food at home. But guess what? My wife also goes to work. She goes to work in her gym. She goes to work in other businesses she's carrying out. So we realize that we all live. The modern man today, you are leaving to work with your wife seated next to you or driving another car, or you are in a taxi together. So now that has brought a lot of challenge. What made a man feel a man in the earlier years was all about bringing the provision. The woman was at home. But now the modern man is finding a challenge. I go to work, my wife goes to work. I buy the meat, my wife can buy the meat. So I buy the car, she also buys a car. I remember there's a couple that came to my office. They had just gotten married. And when they got married, the man told the woman, your money is your money. The woman then was earning around 600,000. And so the man felt, no, I earn 4 million. She earns 600,000. Let her take care of herself with the 600,000. Now, 6 years had passed when they came to my office. The man was complaining, but Pastor, my wife is cheating. I said, why do you say your wife is cheating? That, you know what? My wife has just bought a new Kruger. So, and that Kruger was around 45 million. So the man was puzzled. How can my wife buy a 45 million car earning 600 600,000. So sitting with them on the table, I asked the woman, I said, tell me, how did you get the Kruger? So the woman tells me, oh, Pastor, when we got married 6 years ago, I was earning 600,000. But now I earn 12 million. So I'm able to buy the Kruger. The man was shocked. Said, Pastor, I still earn 7 million. So how come the woman earns all that money and I didn't know? And this was the defense of the woman, because we're talking about the modern man. The woman said, Pastor, when we got married, my husband told me all the money I have is mine. And so I exercised the due diligence. I exercised the right that was given to me. I bought myself a Kruger. So now the fights that are happening with the modern man are quite different. The early man esteemed himself, I bring the meat. I go to the factory, I work, I go hunting and get them and get you the food you need and look after the children. Now, the modern man is struggling. The woman also goes to work. In fact, in some couples and some ladies earn more money than the man. So how do you handle that tension? So that was one of the big differences that we are seeing between the early man and the modern man today. The other one that is key is shelter. One of the things that defined a man, an early man, a man in 100 years ago, was the shelter. You see, in our society, especially in Africa, in Uganda, we called a man when he had a house. So in fact, even when you're getting married, you'll hear couples, families saying, you're going to the man's house. So there was that pride that the man had. There was the early man had that good vibe around him. You know what? I've built a house, now I'm ready to get married. And I had one of my elders, Robbie, who told me a story that in their culture, they're from Bushenyi, in their culture, you can't even plan to get married if you've not built a house. And that made the early man. They made sure there was land around. Maybe daddy gave the son some land, and then he built his small house there near daddy. And when he built that house, everyone in society knew this is time to get married. So, and that brought a lot of privileges for that early man. The woman moved into the house. They started having children. The man walked around as he's the boss. He's the king. He's the one to be respected. And that was a good feel. The woman knew, man, this is the house of the man. I need to honor and respect him. So the honor and the respect came to the man as a result of providing what? Shelter. But now let's look at the modern man today. The modern man today, things have changed. In fact, my wife and I interact with a lot of our daughters at church, and the first thing they're doing, they're buying land. So you find a 28-year-old girl, she has land. You find a 30-year-old girl, she's now building. She has a house. And so instead of the early man example where women moved into the man's house, nowadays it's very common where the man moves in the house of the woman. And I can tell you there is trouble. And I can tell you there is tension. And I can tell you the man doesn't feel respected. And so now things have changed. You find that there is a house, everything is well furnished, and then you move in. And then when you move in, you're wondering, okay, now what do I tell this woman? Do I tell her to wash the dishes? Do I tell her to lay the bed? Do I tell her to clean? How do we handle that? How is a modern man handling that? Because the early man, it was simple. You've come to my house. And so we do life. You respect and honor me because you are under my shelter. Now the women have the shelter. The women have the plot of land or plots of land. Now how will we, the modern men, the men of today, how will we handle such a scenario? Or better still, how are you handling it as a man? I would love to hear stories of how you're handling it. You moved into the house that your wife built or your girlfriend has built. How are you handling that? Because I can tell you the tension. Is there the respect? Is there the love? Do you feel you're the man? And those are the tensions that we are facing. The first tension is the man was the provider. The man went out and hunted. The man went out and laid his life for his family to provide. Broke his back just to make sure the family has something. Modern man today, both women and men are going to work. Wife is going, husband is going. The jobs are not as risky as it was then. Secondly, shelter. The early man, the man 100 years plus ago, he had the shelter. He's the one that built. Now the modern woman that we're looking at and the modern man right now, you both have houses, they have land titles, they have all that. Now, how are we handling that? How ought we to handle that? But the third one that is interesting, and I know men love this, is the sex. You see, the man in the caves, the man 120 years ago, 200 years ago, the early man, when it came to sex, it was all about the man. The woman surrendered sex to the man as a result of seeing, he's breaking his back to provide. He's giving us shelter. So sex is about the man. The man entered the room. He got the sex that he needed and he walked away. Forget the romance, forget the flowers. I don't even think they had flowers then. It was just make sure the man is happy. And that's what the early man did. It was all about him. Once the man has enjoyed sex, whether the woman has enjoyed or not, it didn't matter. And that's how society was built. You'll hear in our culture, even now, you'll hear the singers telling the women, hey, the man, you better give him sex. Meaning that sex is about the man. And that comes from the way the culture was constructed, the way community was constructed then. Now, let's look at the modern man right now, what the modern man is going through. Sex, I've been married for 13 years, and I can tell you beyond a shadow of doubt that it can't work. The early man phenomenon doesn't work. The whole issue of man was a man, sex and man where, it was all about the man in the early man. Now it doesn't work. Sex is about the two people. And I believe that's a great thing. God created sex for married people so that husband and wife can enjoy it. Both should enjoy it. And I think it's a good thing. But this is where the tension is. We as men have grown up knowing that sex is about us. In fact, my first year of marriage, I struggled. It was a struggle because everyone said, man, it's time for sex. Sex is about you. And then you get married to this beautiful hot girl called Angel. And she says, no. Andrew, you're not bringing it. Something is not right. And I'm thinking, okay, all these years they've told me it's about me. Now I've gotten married. They're saying, no. It's about her too. So how do you handle that tension? Then you realize it's not just about submarining at night. No. It's about the flowers. It's about the darling and sweetheart and sweet lumonde and all those beautiful, amazing words our wives want to hear. But let me tell you, the early man had no sweet camonde, had no mania sweetheart, and no, it was boot camping, submarine. But now the modern man has to learn how to propose. We didn't propose. The early man didn't propose, but here you have to learn to propose. You have to learn to buy flowers. You have to learn to go to a very good restaurant. So there are a lot of dynamics that have changed that the modern man needs to learn that didn't happen then. But guess what? But also now the woman is saying, guess what? I can also buy the flowers. I can do this. I can treat me well. So we realize that there's a dilemma, there's a tension. So if you learned from the early man and you've brought it to the modern man now, you're completely failing. And you will hear this thing, women are very difficult. Women are a difficult thing. Why? Because we've learned from the early man 100 years ago, 120 years ago. It doesn't work. And so sex is a mess. But the other one, the fourth one that I want to share with you, the difference, the dilemma between the early man and the modern man was the way the boy child was raised. You see, 100 years plus ago, what happened was fathers took their sons wherever they went. When they went to the garden, they went with them. When they went hunting, they went with their sons. So there was a lot of learning between father and son. And then something happened in between there. The war separated sons. The World War I, II, separated the sons from their fathers. But when we look back before the war, we can see that sons worked well with their fathers. And then you'll always hear mommy is mentoring the daughters, daddy is mentoring the sons. And the sons learned hunting, the sons learned responsibility, learned respect, and that happened in those early years. In the early years, that's what happened. But now, in the modern man, things have changed. Most families, more than 28% of the families, are led by women. They're led by moms. So what is happening is that we have a lot of young men, even older men, who are not ready. They are like their moms. So when they're looking for a wife, they're looking for their mother. I need a woman who will marry me. I need a woman who will buy me a car. I need a woman who will buy me land. I need a woman who will take me to my home. What do they need? That's not a woman. You need a mother. So that's what's happening in the modern society is the men are looking for mothers. So there's a lot of tension there. Why? Because the young men and the older men have not been they've not been mentored. There's a big gap there. So let's recap and just look at some of these dilemmas, the early man and the modern man. Number one, we said the early man, it was all about provide. Break your back, go hunt, go to that factory, bring food home. And you earned respect. You earned honor. The modern man, it's a different thing. Your wife goes to work, you go to work. So how are you going to handle that tension? Your wife even earns more money than you. And I think I'll do a podcast on a man who earns less and the wife earns more. And we'll talk about how do they handle that. The second thing we've seen is the early man shelter. Just make sure there's a house. You can't marry without a house. And then the woman respected and honored you because you gave them shelter. Now it's different. Ladies have properties. They have land. They have houses. Some men are moving into the woman's house. So how do you handle that tension? Then thirdly, we have seen that the sex component, very huge component. And whenever we are teaching biblical manhood, we say there's a difference between a male and a man. A male is biologically born. Their number one need is sex. A man, his number one need is the presence of the Lord. And we'll be looking at that when we start defining what manhood is all about. And so we can see that when it comes to sex, the guys in the early man, sex was a right. It was just give it to me. I don't care how you are, whether you're sick or not. That doesn't matter. Now it's different. Women want the flowers. Women want the romance. They want money. Take me out, take me in, and all that. And that has caused a lot of tension. The way the boy child was raised. In the early years, boys were raised by their fathers. Now the entire households are being raised by moms. And so you're having boys and men who are saying they want a man who can look after them, buy them flowers, buy them a house, and look. So those are some of the dilemmas we are facing. So as a man out there, when you hear some of these dilemmas, I think you ought to ask yourself, what philosophy am I using to be a man? Are you still stuck in the paradigm of the early man, the man in the 1900s? Are you still stuck there? And if you are stuck there, I want to tell you something. The world has changed. If you're still thinking because you provide, because there's a shelter, you demand for sex left and right, and if you are still living in that era, you're going to find it a big challenge when you're faced with a woman. And no wonder right now we have many young ladies ready to get married, and the young men are not. Are you still living in the era of the early man? That's the question I want you to discuss. Are you still living in that era? Number two, which of the things that I've defined, provision, shelter, sex, mentoring young boys, which of them do you identify yourself with? For me, it was provision. I remember the one thing I knew, you have to provide. And then I also struggled with sex. I thought sex was about me. Until I get married after 1 year. In 1 year, we struggled a lot. But after that, we were able to work it out when we learned certain principles, which we will learn on these podcasts. So we want to invite you for the discussion. We'll have a discussion with an older man about this very topic on the third Tuesday of this month at 6 p.m. So I would love you to join. It will be a very good, engaging discussion. So God bless you. Thank you so much for joining this podcast. I pray and hope that it has blessed you. And if it has, please make sure you subscribe on our YouTube channel, go to our Twitter handles, or on our Instagram, and all other platforms that you're enjoying this podcast from. I want you to share it with other men, share it with other ladies so that they can share it with their boyfriends. Let's get the word out so that we can build great men. And every man out there, I want to tell you, we're committed to making sure you're a great man, to making sure you live out your potential. I want to tell you that you are created unique for a purpose. You are created well. I want you to know there's more in you than you can ever imagine. We love you here from Encounter. God bless you.